They told the government I was gone. That's what the woman at the post office said to me, like she was commenting on the weather. She didn't even glance up at first, just kept tapping at her keyboard, smacking her gum, nails long and bright pink clicking against the keys. I'm sorry, ma'am, but our records show the recipient is deceased. For a second I thought I'd misheard her. At 78 my ears aren't perfect, but I knew exactly what she'd said. Deceased? I repeated, squinting at her over my glasses. What on earth did you just say? That finally got her attention. She leaned toward the screen, frowning. That's what it says here. Eleanor Hayes, date of birth July 3, 1947. Status: deceased. Record updated 3 months ago. She looked at me again, uncertainty flickering in her face. And there I was, standing right in front of her, holding the yellow slip that said I had a registered envelope waiting. Probably my monthly benefit, the one steady thing left in my life besides my evening cup of tea. You can see I'm breathing, can't you? I asked dryly. She glanced around, as if maybe a supervisor would appear to handle this nightmare. But it was just the two of us, and the wheeze of the old ceiling fan above. Yeah, I mean, clearly you're alive, she said, her voice wobbling now. I don't know how this could have happened. I didn't answer. I already had my suspicions. She slid the envelope across to me, maybe out of pity, maybe because she didn't want a scene with some old lady in orthopedic shoes. But then she added, "You'll want to go to the benefits office and sort this out. If they've got you marked as dead, they'll stop sending checks." Too late, I muttered under my breath. The envelope felt old, the stamps outdated, rerouted and returned before it finally landed in my hands. The return address wasn't familiar. I stepped outside into the heat, clutching it like it was the last rope holding me up. Across the street, a school bus screeched to a stop, spilling out laughing kids. No one looked my way. Invisible. Someone had declared me dead, not as a figure of speech, not in the we never hear from her kind of way. No. Officially. Legally. On paper. And if they'd done that, what else had they taken from me? I walked the half-mile back to my rented bungalow on Sandalwood Drive, the little place I'd lived in since 1986. My knees complained, but I didn't hurry. Let the truth sting as it sank in. The recycling bin was tipped over again. No one had touched it in weeks. The porch step the landlord promised to fix was still broken, waiting to trip me for real one day. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, quiet, old, and still mine. The photograph stared down at me from the shelf. Richard in his military uniform, Susan in pigtails, Ethan at 6 grinning in his Halloween cape. He's 15 now. He hasn't been by in over a year. I sat down heavily in my chair and tore open the envelope. No check. Just a letter, not even addressed to me, but to the estate of Eleanor Hayes. We regret to inform you that benefits have been terminated, effective March 1st, due to notification of death. To appeal, submit Form SSA 571 with certified proof of error. Someone had submitted that form. Someone had filed a death certificate. That doesn't happen by accident. I pulled open the desk drawer where I kept my important papers. My birth certificate, Richard's old insurance policy, my latest benefit stubs. All intact, all correct. Yet somewhere, someone had already written my ending. The phone buzzed. Spam call, I figured. Nobody I cared for rang me these days, but I picked up anyway. Grandma? Ethan's voice. Deeper now, older. You okay? He asked. I swallowed. I just found out I died, I said flatly. Silence. Then, what? They told the government I was dead so they could steal my checks, I said. And I think your mother had something to do with it. More silence. Then his shaky voice. I don't know anything about that. I believed him. I did. But Susan? Not for a second. I hung up before he could say more. Pulled out my old address book instead. If someone wanted me erased, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I was still here. And I was angry. The house was too quiet. Not calm, hollow. Like something final had been stolen. I put the kettle on anyway. Tea doesn't fix much, but it helps you sit with the noise inside your head. The letter lay open on the table. The estate of Eleanor Hayes. Like I was nothing more than an expired membership. I glanced at the faded curtains, Richard's favorite. He'd hung them the year we moved in, When Susan was 12 and always barefoot, nose stuck in those horse books. I used to think she and I were close. She's 48 now. Lives in a neat beige house with 3 bathrooms and a homeowners association. When Richard passed, she wept at the funeral, held my hand, and then slowly stopped coming around. First it was Ethan's school, then her job, then nothing. It wasn't sudden, that's the cruel part. Estrangement drips in like a leaky faucet. A forgotten birthday. A Christmas card that never comes. Still I kept sending cards. I baked Ethan lemon bars every Easter. I even wrote Susan into my will. A dead woman's will now. I opened the junk drawer, the one with old keys and rubber bands, and dug out my black notebook. Bill records, grocery lists, scribbles. And there it was, the tally of what I'd given them over the years. $800 for Ethan's braces. $4,500 for the car when Susan said theirs had died. $200 for school supplies that probably bought an iPad. And never once did I say no. Not when Richard was alive, not after. We didn't have much, but it was enough. And I thought they needed me. I thought they loved me. I thought wrong. The tea was cold. I poured it down the sink and stepped outside. The garden was choked with weeds. That's when I saw Walter, my neighbor from 2 doors down, hunched over his roses. He waved. "Morning, Eleanor." "Afternoon," I corrected. He laughed. "Time's slippery these days. You still do odd jobs?" I called. "Lawn work? Fixing things?" He straightened, wiped his hands. "Sure. What's broken?" "I'm not dead," I said. Walter blinked. "I what?" "I need someone to come with me to the benefits office tomorrow. A witness in case they don't believe I exist." His face darkened. "Good Lord, Eleanor. What happened?" I told him part of it anyway. Not about Susan, not the money. Just that someone had filed false paperwork, my check stopped, and now I had to prove I was alive. "That's fraud," he said firmly. "That's serious. Tell that to the system," I muttered. He nodded. "I'll drive you." That night I hardly slept. Over and over I heard those words, status, deceased, as if I were just a name on a screen deleted with one keystroke. 3 in the morning I gave up. Wrapped my robe around me and sat at the little writing desk by the window. The cedar smell still clung faintly to the drawers. I opened to a fresh page in my notebook and wrote at the top, "Things I know for sure. I am alive. Someone is lying. I will not be erased." The wind rattled the branches outside, tapping the glass like a warning. They thought I'd be silent, that I'd fade away, that paperwork would become truth. But I raised a child. I buried a husband. I built a life from scratch. And I wasn't about to let anyone, not even my own daughter, bury me before my time. The benefits office was in a squat, gray building behind the grocery store, looking exhausted even at 9 a.m. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, plastic chairs lined up along the walls, each filled with people waiting for more than just paperwork. Waiting for dignity, maybe hope. Walter sat beside me with a worn fishing magazine. He didn't pry. Just nodded when I asked him to be my witness. Someone with an ID who could say, "Yes, I know this woman. She's alive." When my number was called, B74, I stood slowly, stiff knees complaining, and walked to the counter. The clerk couldn't have been more than 25. Heavy eyeliner, badge reading Chantel. "Hi there," she said without looking up. "What can I help you with?" "I need to correct a record," I said. Apparently, someone filed a death certificate for me, but here I am breathing. Her fingers froze. She glanced at me, then back at her screen. Name: Eleanor Hayes. July 3, 1947. Click. Tap. Her brows knit together. Yeah. It says you were marked deceased on February 18th, certificate on file. Who filed it? She frowned, scrolling. Turned her monitor just slightly away from me. We don't usually have that information. Hang on. She vanished into the back. The waiting room smelled of sanitizer and stale air. A toddler wailed somewhere down the row. Walter raised his eyebrows at me. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I will be." The supervisor arrived. A sharp, silver-haired woman with a clipped tone. "Mrs. Hayes, we've reviewed your case. A family member submitted documentation to Vital Records, and our system terminated your benefits based on that." I stared. So you just took their word for it? There was a signed death certificate, she said coolly. Show it to me. That's not standard procedure. Well, I'm not standard procedure, I snapped. I'm the one they buried on paper. Walter leaned forward. I've known her 20 years. She's alive. The supervisor gave him a thin nod. You'll need to file Form 862A with proof of life, government ID, utility bill, etc. Once submitted, we'll initiate review. It may take weeks. In the meantime, no benefits. And the checks that already went out, who cashed them? Her pause told me enough. That may require a separate investigation. She knew. Not everything, but enough. I want a copy of the death certificate, I said. You'll need to request it from Vital Records, she replied. I gave her a smile that didn't touch my eyes. Then I'll do just that. Walter and I walked out into the heavy gray sky, the smell of rain hanging close. They're stonewalling, Walter muttered as he unlocked the truck. Yes, I said, fastening my seatbelt. But I'm used to that. He gave me a sideways glance as we pulled onto the road. So what now? I'm going to find out who signed my death certificate, I told him quietly. And then I'm going to remind them what it means to still be alive. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table and dialed the Department of Vital Records. The hold music was bright and cheery, the kind of tune that grated when your whole life was unraveling. When a clerk finally answered, I was polite but firm. I gave my name, my birthday, my social security number. Then I said, I'd like a certified copy of the death certificate that was filed in my name. There was a pause. Ma'am, are you the next of kin? No, I said flatly. I'm the deceased. 3 days later the envelope came. Plain manila, ordinary looking, but heavy with betrayal. I opened it with trembling hands. There it was, black and white. Eleanor Margaret Hayes. Female. Born July 3, 1947. Died February 18, 2025. Cause of death. Complications from pneumonia. I stared at the words like they belonged to someone else. Pneumonia? I hadn't even had a sniffle in years. My last doctor's visit said my blood pressure was steady, cholesterol decent. If I died of pneumonia, I figured I would have noticed. And then I saw the bottom. Informant. Susan L. Whitaker. My daughter. My own flesh and blood had signed a government form swearing I was gone. I recognized the handwriting in those neat loops instantly. The same swirls she used to scrawl across her school notebooks. I pressed the paper flat against the table and sat still. No tears this time. Just a sharp hollow ache. Then I rose, opened the hall closet, and dragged out the fireproof box Richard always kept for our important papers. Inside, our marriage license, insurance records, the deed to the cemetery plot we'd bought just in case, and the will we'd updated 2 decades ago when Susan still called me every Sunday. Her name was in that will. So was Ethan's. But my name, the one she buried, was on everything else. I found the envelope marked POA. Power of attorney. I'd signed it after my hip surgery 3 years back just in case something went wrong. Temporary, Susan had promised. Just until you're steady again. I never revoked it. Too trusting. Too tired. Too foolish. And now she'd used it to erase me. Walter came by at noon with groceries. He knocked his usual rhythm, 2 short, 1 long, then stepped inside. Brought eggs and that rye bread you like, he said before catching sight of my face. What happened? I handed him the certificate. He read it twice, jaw tight. She filed this. I nodded. Fraud, I whispered. Deliberate fraud. She used my power of attorney to file a death certificate, redirect my checks, and probably more. Walter dropped heavily into a chair. You need a lawyer. I need a lawyer, a banker, and maybe a priest, I muttered. He gave a short laugh, but it faded quickly. You going to confront her? Not yet, I said. First I need to see just how far she went. That afternoon I called my bank. A cheerful voice answered. Thank you for calling Meadow Valley Credit Union. This is Karen. How may I help you? Hi, Karen. I'd like to check the recent activity on my account. Of course, Mrs. Hayes. May I have your member ID? I gave it. Silence followed. It appears your account is listed as closed. Closed? Yes, ma'am. Closed on February 27. Funds were transferred to a joint account under the names Susan Whitaker and Ethan Whitaker. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. Was that done under power of attorney? Yes, ma'am. We have the document on file. And since you were reported deceased, the protocol. I hung up. No more words left. Everything, 40 years of savings Richard and I built, the small inheritance from my sister in Vermont, the life insurance payout after Richard's death gone. That night I didn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling fan until the sky grew pale. By sunrise I had made up my mind. They thought I was too old to notice, too soft to fight, too dead to care. They were wrong. The next morning I dressed like I was heading to church. Navy blouse, pearl earrings Richard gave me on our 35th anniversary, and low black heels I hadn't worn in years. Some things keep their shape even after being forgotten. I packed a folder. The forged death certificate, bank papers, old benefit stubs, the power of attorney. Walter offered to drive, but I needed this part alone. The lawyer's office was in an old brownstone near the courthouse. Brass plaque, creaky wooden steps, the smell of ink and legal pads. The receptionist peered over her glasses. Mrs. Hayes? Mr. Harland is expecting you. I dug his name out of Richard's old address book. He'd handled our estate planning years ago. Back when Susan was still home and thought macaroni casserole was fancy food. Now his hair was white, his face calm and steady. Eleanor, he said warmly, standing to greet me. It's been years. Too many, I answered. Thank you for seeing me so quickly. Always, he said, motioning to a chair. What brings you in? I slid the folder across. He read carefully, nodding now and then. When he reached the death certificate, he stopped. She filed this. Yes. And the bank transfers, all using the POA? I nodded. He removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. That's not just wrong. It's criminal. I figured as much. What do you want to do, Eleanor? It was the first time since Richard died that anyone had asked me what I wanted. I want to revoke the power of attorney. I want my accounts reopened in my name only. And I want charges pressed if there's a case. There is, he said firmly. Then he began outlining the steps. Letters to the banks, a notarized affidavit, a court petition to reverse the death declaration. It would take time, bureaucracy always did. But he looked at me like I wasn't fragile but formidable. You'll need a statement, he added. About your relationship with your daughter, why she might have done this. She got tired of waiting, I said softly. Waiting for me to die. He didn't write that down, but I saw him pause. We spent an hour with forms and documents. His paralegal started drafting the revocation. He gave me a list of agencies to call: Social Security, DMV, Medicare. Each place where I'd been erased. When I left, I felt steadier. More alive. I stopped by the courthouse diner, ordered toast and coffee, and sat by the window. The waitress didn't know me, didn't ask questions. That felt like relief. Halfway through my toast, I pulled out a napkin and wrote 2 lines. You buried me with a signature. Now watch me dig myself out. I folded it and tucked it away. Not a letter yet. But one day it would be. The Social Security office smelled like plastic and exhaustion. A man argued about a lost ID. A woman behind me sighed loudly, as if impatience could make things move faster. I sat with my folder back straight, waiting. When they called G142, I walked to the counter. The clerk's nameplate read Yvette. She looked tired but not unkind. Name: Eleanor Hayes. She typed, then froze. You were declared deceased. So I've been told, I said. But as you can see, that was premature. Her expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe recognition. You have ID? I slid over my license, a utility bill, the affidavit Mr. Harland had prepared, and a new photo for good measure. She studied them one by one, then turned back to her screen. This could take time. I can wait, I said. You may not get back pay for the months you were listed deceased. Not without an appeal. I'll appeal everything. She nodded. I'll escalate this. You'll get a letter within 2 weeks confirming review. Status updates can take longer across agencies. I'll wait, I repeated. When I stepped outside, drizzle had started. The streets were quiet, slick with rain. Back at home, my answering machine blinked. I pressed play. "Hi, Mom. It's Susan." Her voice sounded strange, flat, cautious. "I think we should talk. I heard from the bank. Things changed. Just call me, okay?" She didn't say she missed me. She didn't say she was sorry. Just things changed. I didn't call back. Instead, I poured tea and spread the bank statements I'd requested across the table. There it was, my money turned into her life. Mortgage payments, tuition under Ethan's initials, spa treatments, dinners out, a weekend rental by the coast. Over $48,000 in 3 months. All under the excuse of grief. They hadn't just pretended I was gone. They'd celebrated it. I stared at a line item. $379 for sheets at a luxury bedding store. I hadn't spent that much on a mattress in my life. When Ethan was little, he once cried in a grocery store, convinced he'd lost me forever. I found him sobbing by the canned goods, little fists clenched, calling for me. I wondered now, if this lie had worked, if I'd vanished on paper, would he have cried then? Or would he have just gone shopping? I folded the statements back into the envelope. This wasn't over. They hadn't just stolen from me, they'd rewritten me. And now I was writing myself back in. The hardest part wasn't proving I was alive. It was proving I used to matter. Bureaucracy has rules, forms, steps. But people forget. They move on. They tell new stories where you no longer exist. And in Susan's new story, I was already gone. I learned that again the next morning when I called the electric company. "Yes, Mrs. Hayes," the man said after verifying my info. "Your account was transferred 3 months ago. New holder Susan Whitaker." "I never requested that," I snapped. "I live here. I've lived here for 39 years. "I understand, but we received a notarized letter and a death certificate. Standard procedure." Standard. As if erasing me was just another form to process. I hung up and wrote a list: electric, water, gas, trash, phone line. All of them in Susan's name now. She hadn't just buried me. She was already taking my house. My landlord, Mr. Pollard, lived across town in a duplex. I hadn't spoken to him in years, just mailed checks and he cashed them. But now I needed answers. When he opened the door, his eyes widened. "Mrs. Hayes," he said. "Well, I'll be." "I heard." "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, stepping onto his porch. "That you'd passed," Mr. Pollard said slowly. "Your daughter told me she'd be handling things from now on. Gave me her number. Rent's been coming in on time, so I didn't. She forged a death certificate. I cut in evenly. I'm very much alive." His face went pale. "Oh my God. She's been paying with your money?" "From my closed accounts," I confirmed. He dragged a hand through his thinning hair. "Mrs. Hayes, I am so sorry. I had no idea." "I need a copy of the lease," I said. "Anything she signed, anything she changed." "Of course," he said quickly. "Come in, please." The papers told me everything. Susan had filed a request to switch the lease into her name, citing my death as the reason. Attached was a letter, neatly typed, polite and clinical. I read it twice. One line stopped me cold. "We'll be clearing the house by summer." Clearing it. As if my home were nothing more than a storage unit. I thanked Mr. Pollard, told him not to contact Susan again until my lawyer reached out. He nodded, shaken. He offered to drive me back, but I declined. I needed to walk. On the way, I passed a florist shop. Not the one Susan favored, but another run by Lucy, the woman who once gave Ethan a summer job when he was 15. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Hayes," she called, stepping from behind the counter. "I get that a lot lately," I said with a dry smile. "Apparently, I've been haunting people." Her eyes softened. Then she walked over and hugged me. It was brief, but it was the first real human touch I'd had in weeks. "You want some tea?" she asked. I nodded. We sat in the back room, surrounded by buckets of roses and carnations. I told her the truth. Not the legal jargon, not the court filings, just the plain story. My daughter had declared me dead, stolen everything, and left me to disappear inside my own life. "I'm so sorry," Lucy said. "I remember when Susan used to bring Ethan in here. She always looked so polished but cold." "She wasn't always like that," I murmured. "She used to braid my hair when I was sick." She used to cry when I cried. What changed? Lucy asked softly. I stared into my tea. She got used to me being small. Lucy didn't answer. She just squeezed my hand. That night I stood in my living room, looking at everything Susan planned to clear. Richard's old armchair, worn where he used to nap. The bookshelf lined with his favorite mystery novels. The framed cross-stitch from my sister's last Christmas. They weren't just things. They were proof I had lived. And I wasn't about to let anyone sweep that away. When I walked into Joseph Harlan's office the next morning, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and determination. He glanced up from his desk, already setting aside a folder. I was just about to call you, he said. There's progress. I sat down carefully, setting my own stack of papers beside me. We've filed the revocation of the power of attorney, he explained. And we submitted a motion in probate court to reverse the death declaration. Normally that drags on for months, but given the evidence, they've agreed to expedite. Within 10 business days, your legal identity will be fully reinstated. It should have felt like a win. Instead, I just felt bone-tired. All right, I said quietly. And after that? We notify the bank, your landlord, the benefits office. They'll be obligated to restore your records. Then we can move forward with criminal charges. He hesitated. Have you decided how far you want to take this? His eyes were patient, but I knew what he was asking. Do you really want to go after your own daughter? I want it on record, I said. I want the law to recognize it for what it is. Fraud. Exploitation. Theft. He nodded. Then we'll proceed. I also want to change my will. His brows lifted. Understood. I pulled out a blank sheet. What's left of my assets goes to no one who declared me dead. Susan is out. So is Ethan, unless I learn he truly didn't know. He blinked. Even Ethan? I hesitated, then shook my head. Not yet. He's still just a boy in this. But if I find out he knew, then yes. I'll draft a conditional clause, he said. There was something final in those words, as if I'd stepped through a door that only swung one way. Maybe I had. After leaving Joseph's office, I stopped at the library. My card still worked. The woman at the desk, Marcy, who used to run the knitting circle, looked at me wide-eyed. Mrs. Hayes, my God. We heard. I know what you heard, I said sharply. She flushed. You're very much here. And not in the mood to be whispered about. Of course. Can I help you find something? Yes, I said after a pause. Books on elder fraud. Identity recovery. Abuse of power of attorney. She didn't ask more questions. I walked out with 4 heavy books, a sense of direction, and a fire in my chest I hadn't felt in years. That evening my voicemail blinked. Ethan's voice crackled through. Grandma, hey. Mom's kind of freaking out. She says there's banking issues. She told me not to call, but this feels weird. If you're okay, can you let me know? It was the first time I'd heard real doubt in his voice. I didn't call him back. Not yet. But I saved the message. Then I opened one of the library books. The introduction read, most elder financial abuse is committed by family. They count on silence. They count on shame. They count on you doing nothing. They'd made the wrong bet with me. The courthouse was colder than I remembered, or maybe I was just older now. The hearing room was plain. Beige walls, plastic chairs, a scuffed wooden table where truth was supposed to rise above lies. Joseph sat beside me, steady as always, our folder thick with evidence. Across the room, a woman from the registrar's office represented the state. Not my enemy, just the gatekeeper. But I could tell she wasn't sure what to make of me. A dead woman sitting upright in court. Petitioner seeks reversal of a wrongful death designation, the clerk read. The judge, pale and droop-eyed but kind-voiced, looked down from the bench. Mrs. Hayes, he said, you've submitted proof of identity, a medical affidavit, live testimony. Frankly, this is the most well-documented case of not being dead I've ever seen. A soft chuckle rippled through the room. Even the registrar cracked a smile. I'd laugh, I said, if it hadn't taken 8 weeks to convince people I still exist. He nodded. I read the file. Disturbing. He turned to the registrar. And the original certificate? She slid a copy across the table. Filed February 18th by informant Susan Whitaker, under power of attorney now revoked. Joseph added, all fraudulent actions are included in the file. The judge studied the paper, then looked at me. Do you wish to make a statement, Mrs. Hayes? I stood. My knees complained, but my voice did not. My daughter declared me dead, I said. Not because I was sick. Not because she was grieving. But because I was inconvenient. She wanted what I had before I had the decency to stop breathing. The room fell silent. She drained my accounts. She transferred my lease. She hijacked my utilities. She didn't just file a form, she made a choice. And I've spent every day since proving something that never should have needed proof. I don't want pity. I want my name back. The judge tapped his pen. Petition granted. Let the record show Eleanor Margaret Hayes is legally alive. Status to be restored across all agencies within 5 business days. He looked up. Welcome back, Mrs. Hayes. I sat slowly, my heart steady but my fingers cold. Outside, Joseph smiled. That's one battle won. One, I agreed. We walked a few steps. What now? He asked. I want to press charges, I said. Let the DA see exactly what she did. He nodded. We'll submit everything. But it may take time. I've got time, I said. And if I don't, I'll make enough noise that someone listens. Back home the phone rang. Ethan's voice again. Grandma. Mom's freaking out. Says you went to court. Says you're trying to ruin her. I'm not trying, I said. I'm succeeding. Silence stretched. Then, did she really do all that? She filed my death, I told him. You tell me, Ethan. What did you think happened when I stopped answering? When the checks kept coming? He didn't reply. Did you believe I was gone? I asked gently. I don't know, he whispered. You do, I said. You just didn't want to ask. There was another long silence. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered. I didn't answer. Not because I thought he was lying, but because it was too soon to know if sorry would ever be enough. Can I come see you? He asked after a beat. I hesitated. Not yet. Then I hung up and stood by the window, watching the trees sway in the afternoon light. The world kept moving and I was still here to see it. She hadn't expected me to show up at her door. I saw it in her eyes the second she opened it. A flicker of disbelief, then panic, then something raw and unguarded. Not guilt. Not fear. Just the sharp sting of being caught. Eleanor, Susan said, her voice thinner than I remembered. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I stood on the welcome mat of the house my money had helped buy. The white clapboard 2-story with the stone planters she never watered. The new car gleaming in the driveway. The hanging basket on the porch. Polished. Curated. All mine by rights. She hesitated. Do you want to come in? I walked past her without asking. The inside was worse than I imagined. Not messy, immaculate. Cold. Pale. Magazine perfect. But everywhere I looked I saw something stolen. Richard's leather recliner from his den. My blue wool throw from the living room. Even the glass jar that once held cinnamon sticks, now filled with lavender, perched by a stove I had never cooked on. Susan crossed her arms, hovering like she wasn't sure whether to defend herself or the furniture. I didn't think you'd want any of that, she said. I just didn't want it to go to waste. It wasn't yours to take. You were gone, she snapped. You weren't answering. The neighbors said you hadn't been outside in weeks. You filed a death certificate, I said evenly. You told the government I was dead. You drained my accounts. You rerouted my checks. You moved my lease, took my name off the records, and started clearing out my house. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. I didn't think it would go this far. No, I said. You thought it would go quietly. She retreated to the kitchen, gesturing as if countertops and coffee mugs could turn this into a normal conversation. I was struggling, she said. Ethan's tuition, the mortgage. You had choices, I cut in. You had a dozen choices. You could have asked. You could have told the truth. Instead, you put a knife in my back and called it necessity. I didn't know how to stop, she whispered. That, I said, I believe. Silence hung between us, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Where is he? I asked. Ethan's at school, she said quickly. Why? I shook my head. He called me. He knows. Susan turned away, gripping the counter so tightly her knuckles went white. I never meant to hurt you. You buried me, I said flatly. You didn't just steal. You tried to erase me. That truth sat heavier in the air than any accusation. She turned back. Are you going to press charges? I already have. Her eyes widened. I'm not here to ask your permission, I said. I came to see what you've done with my eyes on my time. She looked around at the house, the furniture, the silence. Then she said it. I was tired of waiting. She didn't shout. She didn't sneer. She just told the truth. Tired of waiting for me to fade, to give, to leave. I nodded once. Then I walked to the front door, opened it and stepped out. The sky was gray, the trees still. And for the first time I felt light. Not because justice had been done, but because I'd finally stopped pretending she was someone she wasn't, and stopped pretending I deserved it. I didn't say a word when Ethan opened his apartment door. He looked older than I remembered and younger at the same time. The way guilt can age a person in one direction and strip them down in another. Grandma, he said softly. I nodded. He stepped aside. The apartment smelled of instant noodles and detergent. Posters on the walls, a laundry basket in the corner. His life scattered in pieces, half-built and uncertain. I didn't know you were coming, he said, tugging at his sleeve. Your mom didn't send me, I said. She's not here. I know. I sat on the edge of his sagging futon. He sank into a chair across from me, elbows on his knees, head bowed like a boy waiting for detention. I didn't think you were really gone, he said after a while. But Mom. She made it sound like maybe you didn't want to be bothered anymore. Like everything was handled. She told the state I was dead, I said. She took everything I had. His face tightened. She told me not to ask questions. Said grief makes people judge unfairly. I studied him. And what do you think now? He met my eyes. I should have gone to your house. Knocked on your door. No matter what she said. I didn't nod. I didn't forgive. But I listened. He reached into his backpack, pulling out a small box wrapped in brown paper. I went by your house a few weeks ago. I didn't knock. I just left this on the porch. Thought maybe you'd find it. I opened it slowly. Inside was a tiny ceramic frog, chipped and painted unevenly. You used to keep that by the kitchen window, he said. Said it was your good luck charm. I remember. I found it in a box, he said. In Mom's garage. She called it old clutter. He winced. I'm sorry. The frog warmed in my hand. I don't know how to fix it, he said softly. You can't, I told him. Some things stay broken. But you can stop pretending. That's where it starts. He nodded slowly. I never wanted her to do what she did. But I didn't stop her either. And that's something you'll have to carry, I said. Silence fell, not cold, just still. Do you hate her? He asked finally. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. I used to love her so much I couldn't see who she'd become. And now I see clearly. He stared at his shoes. I want to see you again. Even if it's not the same. I stood slowly, setting the frog on his windowsill. We'll see, I said. As I walked to the door he stood too awkward, quiet. I'll call you, he said. If you do, I told him. Don't wait for me to die first. And then I left. The bank manager's office was brighter than I expected. Big windows, fresh flowers, a bowl of mints on the desk. The man behind it, Thomas Brewer, wore a sharp gray suit and a nervous smile. Mrs. Hayes, he said, standing to shake my hand. Please have a seat. I sat and slid a fresh folder across the desk. I've received the court confirmation, he said. You're now legally reinstated in all systems. I'm truly sorry for everything that's happened. You approved the transfers, I said quietly. You let someone drain over $70,000 from my accounts. He shifted. We acted on the documents presented at the time. The death certificate. The power of attorney. That power of attorney is void, I said. And I want every cent traced. Every transaction. Every account with my name on it or tied to it investigated. We've already begun the audit, he said quickly. Some funds were moved into a joint account with Ms. Whitaker's son. Some were spent directly. We've filed a fraud report and will cooperate fully with law enforcement. Good. He cleared his throat. I also understand you'd like to open a new account? I slid another document forward. A trust in the name of Eloise Matten. He blinked. Eloise. A friend's granddaughter. She's studying social work. I've known her since she was born. She's not blood. Maybe that's why I still trust her. He skimmed the paperwork. Assigning her as beneficiary? Yes. And I want every deposit moved there. Pension, retirement, whatever's left. And I want it protected. No joint access. No substitutions. Of course, he said quickly. I leaned back, watching sunlight play across his polished desk. I used to come here once a month. Sat out there in the waiting chairs. Brought cookies sometimes. Susan loved seeing her name on the statements. She liked pretending it was hers. He didn't respond. I gave her too much, I said. Now I'm giving it to someone else. Not because she asked, because she never tried to take. He looked almost ashamed. Is there anything else I can do? Call me when the paperwork's done, I said. That'll be enough. Back home, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out Richard's old suitcase. The one he used for business trips. I hadn't touched Richard's old suitcase since he passed. Now it held all of my papers. The voided death certificate, the court order, the audit reports, a copy of my new trust agreement. On top, I laid the photo of Richard and me from our 30th anniversary, the one where we were dancing barefoot in the backyard grass. It wasn't a war chest, but it was proof. Proof that I had fought. That night, I slept without locking the door. Not because I was careless, but because for the first time in years I wasn't afraid someone might walk in and take what belonged to me. There wasn't much left, but what remained was truly mine again. It was Frank who brought me the newspaper the next morning. He didn't knock, just walked in like he always did, holding the folded pages as though they burned his hands. You need to see this, he said. I was in the kitchen slicing pears. The knife froze midair as he set the paper on the table. Front page. Local woman declared dead. Fights back. Wins case. There was a photo too, grainy small. Me stepping out of the courthouse last week. Eyes squinting against the sun. Cardigan whipping in the wind. I read the first lines aloud. Eleanor Hayes, 78, was legally declared dead earlier this year by her own daughter. Now she's alive and demanding justice. Frank sat across from me. They interviewed someone at the courthouse. Clerk maybe. They didn't name you for quotes, but the story's clear. I kept reading. The case has drawn attention to a growing issue nationwide. Financial exploitation of seniors by family members. Hayes, a retired librarian, had her benefits terminated, bank accounts emptied, and home threatened. All based on a falsified death certificate filed by her daughter, Susan Whitaker, under power of attorney. They thought I was gone, Hayes said in court. But I was just quiet. There's a difference. I hadn't said it quite like that. But I recognized the truth. They're asking for comment, Frank said. From you. I won't give it. You sure? I didn't do this to be in print. He nodded, but I couldn't deny what stirred in me reading those lines. Not pride. Not triumph. Something quieter. Like being seen after standing in the shadows too long. The phone rang. Frank raised his brows. Want me to? I'll answer. It was a reporter. A woman named Gina. Polite, measured. Careful not to sound like a vulture. I wanted to verify some facts, she said. Your reinstatement. The fraud case. The charges, they're accurate. Would you be willing to speak on the record? No, I said. But I'll give you a message. She waited. Tell them I'm alive, I said. Tell them silence doesn't mean surrender. And tell them some women grow sharper with age, not softer. May I print that? She asked. You already did, I replied and hung up. Later that day, Frank brought me a second copy of the paper. Thought you'd want one that isn't wrinkled. I tucked it into the same folder with the court documents and the little ceramic frog from Ethan. One day, someone would open that folder and wonder what kind of woman I was. They wouldn't have to guess. They'd see what I did when they tried to erase me. And maybe, just maybe, they'd remember not to stay quiet. The charges came 2 weeks later. No call from Susan. No letter. No knock at my door. But I didn't need one. I knew the moment I saw the envelope from the district attorney's office in my mailbox. Frank was trimming his hedges when I opened it. "Is that it?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. I nodded. "They're pursuing financial exploitation and identity fraud. 2 felonies. 1 misdemeanor." He let out a low whistle. "She won't like that." "No," I said. But I didn't like being dead. I sat on the porch and read the letter again. The phrasing was cold, official. The people versus Susan Whitaker. But to me it was never cold. It was always personal. She had a court date now, a hearing, and possibly a trial. She wouldn't see prison, not likely. But there would be a record. A mark. Proof. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that the girl who once clung to my skirts during thunderstorms had become someone who could bury me for a price. I made a pot of tea and sat with the quiet. Then I wrote her a letter. Not to send. Just to write. "Susan, you didn't just steal money. You stole the shape of my life. You stepped into rooms I built and claimed them. You mistook silence for weakness. You bet on my love lasting longer than your conscience. And maybe you were right. I gave more than I should have, not because you asked, but because I wanted to believe. Believe you were still the girl who braided my hair, who cried at sad movies. You're not. And I've accepted that. But here's what you didn't erase. I'm still here. Still standing. Still breathing in this little house with its crooked step and yellow curtains. You cleared out drawers, but you didn't clear me. You never will. I hope you sit with what you did. I hope it keeps you awake the way it kept me awake. But more than that, I hope one day you tell the truth. Not to the court. Not to me. To yourself." I folded the letter and slid it into the back of my notebook. Then I watered the rose bush Richard planted 30 years ago and sat on the steps. The breeze was warm. A robin picked at something in the grass. For once, I let myself think not about what was stolen, but about what remained, my name, my story, my breath in the morning. That was enough. I didn't attend the hearing. Joseph went in my place with a folder thick as a brick. Later he called. "She entered a plea," he said. "No contest to the felony. Guilty to the misdemeanor. Court accepted it." What does that mean for her? No jail time. Probation. Restitution order. She'll repay a portion. Not everything, but some. I nodded, though he couldn't see. "She didn't speak," he added. "Not a word." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the lamp low, the summer air drifting in. I opened the old black notebook I'd started the day I first learned I was deceased. On one page, the title, "Things I Know for Sure." I am alive. Someone is lying. I will not be erased. I added a 4th line. They were wrong about me. They thought I wouldn't fight. That age softened your spine. That love could be twisted into a rope to bind you while they walked away with your life. But I learned this. Quiet is not weakness. Stillness is not surrender. The next morning, I took the bus into town. I went back to the post office where it had all begun. The place where a young clerk once told me, without blinking, that I was dead. She was there again. Looked up. Blinked. "Oh," she said. "It's you." I smiled. "It is." She flushed. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You were just doing your job," I said. "It wasn't your fault." She hesitated. "You look different." "I feel different." Before I left, I mailed a single letter. Not to Susan. Not to the court. To myself. The one I'd written months ago, now sealed and stamped. On the envelope. "Keep this." Written in my own hand. Sometimes we forget how far we've come. Sometimes we need a breadcrumb back to ourselves. On the way home, I passed Lucy's flower shop. She spotted me through the glass and waved me in. "You made the paper again," she said, handing me a clipping. "Just a short commentary piece. Elder fraud is real, but so is resilience." My name wasn't even in it. Still, I smiled. "I keep thinking about everything you've been through," Lucy said. "And you're still here. Still upright. Still in one piece." "Not the same piece," I said. "But yes. Still here." As I turned to go, she stopped me. "Eleanor," she asked, "if you could tell one thing to someone going through the same thing, what would it be?" I thought for a long moment. Then I said, don't wait to be saved. Save yourself. And that's what I want you to know. If you've ever been silenced, dismissed, taken for granted, don't wait for someone to fix it. Start walking. Start asking. Start writing things down. They may try to write you out, but you get to write back. And if this story means something to you, if it makes you feel seen or strong, or simply not alone, then share it. Pass it on. Not for me. For the next woman. The one just now realizing they tried to bury her and forgot she was a seed.